Sean hit on a little bit, Xavier Gilliam. I don't have a pick in for him right now, but I think all things point towards Penn State with one. Came on campus this weekend, verified from what I was told at least. Sounds to be right around a little under 6'3", 260. Can certainly add on some weight as well. But this is the player that I think Penn State has decided to push their chips on. He is going to go down south for a few schools, see a couple of North Carolina schools. I know he said Cincinnati's also in the mix, but Penn State's the only school he has an official visit set with right now. And honestly, from talking to him, I was trying to get more on other official visits and things and what his plans are. And, whenever a kid's telling me, I just want to get through the spring and then I'll figure things out, gives me the impression that he could potentially be a guy to watch for a commitment before we get to June. But let's see. Maybe as I say that, he'll probably set up a couple official visits and things will change. But either way, I think if Xavier Gilliam's not in this class right now, I'd be pretty surprised.
Well, let's jump ahead a little bit. I want to get into the defensive tackle prospects then. We're hitting on Gilliam. This is obviously a huge part of this cycle. It's not just defensive end. We've covered it on multiple shows. Defensive tackle as well. Another one of the Jalen's fits that you mentioned, Jalen Hicks. What were you able to learn about Hicks, and what are your thoughts on that recruitment?
A little smaller than listed. I think he was listing himself 6'4". He's about 6'2", so that's typical this time of year. 256, and that's fine for a defensive tackle at this point. He plays on the edge at the high school level. We will see where he, how he eventually grows. But this is a guy that's there's a lot to like there as a raw prospect. I don't think he's going to be the top guy on the board by any stretch, but you can see in looking at his film, he's got some pop. He's got some things that jump out. And I think he's been a guy that's been on the radar for a while. Penn State offered, I believe, in February. So still building that relationship with Deion Barnes. He was very impressed. When you're gauging guys on who gets back to you right away and in quality responses, Jalen Hicks was right up there this weekend. So it's just a veritable smorgasbord of defensive tackle body types in this class, because we mentioned Gilliam 6'3", 260. You mentioned Jalen Hicks at 6'2", about 255, and then you go to a guy like David Palepale, who I know talked to Ryan this weekend about his visit list, and he's 6'3", 300 pounds. So there's a lot of guys that there's a variance of body types here. And for Penn State, who's going to take probably 3 or 4 defensive tackles, or maybe even more, because you take into account those big defensive ends that eventually turn into defensive tackles. It's something that you're looking for to spread that board out.
Yeah, one thing that's I find very interesting is I'm seeing more and more when I'm watching film. A lot of high schools are going to a 3-down front, and I think it might have to do a lot with the spread proliferating at the high school level and becoming a little bit more efficient, where it's not just, kind of at these levels, it's becoming a little more well taught. So you're going to be finding some of those 5 technique tweeners that are really being pushed to develop and grow, where maybe in the past they would have either been a defensive tackle, defensive end, and had to make some body choices. So you got some real tweeners here in the class, which is both good and bad, because Penn State has been targeting those guys over time anyway. Now they've got a little bit of a different skill set coming into college. One guy who does not have he is clearly a defensive tackle is David Palepale. Ryan, you have talked to him. What were your impressions of your conversation with David?
Well, David, to clarify, David wasn't on campus this past weekend. David set a visit schedule, which is why I posted a story on him the other day. He's going to Pitt this upcoming weekend. He has another trip to Michigan, I believe the weekend after that. So April 7th, Pitt will be April 1, and then he will be at Penn State April 11th. He tweeted that out the other night. So Palepale's gotten some really impressive offers here over the last, 2 months or so. To me, I would have, from just talking to people, I think I would have Gilliam a little bit ahead of him. And then you have, obviously a bunch of stud players like Ernest Willer and maybe Ume, depending on how he grows. A couple others that I would have ahead. But at the end of the day, if Palepale really wants to come to Penn State, I think that's something that Penn State's really going to have to have a hard discussion about. And I would still probably lean towards them taking him. I don't know. I just think it's hard for them to pass up a kid from Hempfield. But that a lot of that's also going to determine on when the player commits, who all's already committed, all those
Right.
kind of things kind of go into it. But we know he's coming back here on campus in a couple of weeks. As I said, though, man, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Auburn, I mentioned Michigan, obviously he's going to go visit. Like he's really added some quality offers of late. So just curious to see how this progresses. I actually kind of thought he would get out and see more of those schools. I don't think he has been to Pitt or Michigan yet. So, or excuse me, no, I think he has been to Pitt. I know he hasn't been to Michigan, but either way, I was kind of surprised that he's maybe not going to go see a couple more of, like a Notre Dame or some of those Southern schools. But we'll see. Maybe he'll take him a little bit down the road. But I mean, Sean, do you have any thoughts on Palepale, man? Like, I think like right now they would don't want to run into it, but I feel like this is going to be a guy they have to seriously consider at some point.
I mean, you look at what they've done at defensive tackle and on all the complaints about not being big enough and everything like that. And this is a big kid, strong kid. There's a lot to like. Yeah. So you question what the holdup is, because there is some sort of holdup. They're obviously not, full bore on him. Whether that's size, strength. I mean, whether
I would contend length might be the issue. Like just looking at him film, I that would be the concern I have right away. And kind of a similar player. You look at what Devon Ellis has been at Penn State, kind of the similar body type, but at the same time fits. In this class we talk about, they're going to take a bunch of guys. You would be willing to take a risk on a guy that maybe you're not 100% sold on if you're taking 3 or 4, right?
And that's my argument here is like, okay, so can he act on the Ohio State offer? Probably not. But those schools are getting in because 6'3", 300 pounds and can move a little bit. Those guys are hard to find. So get in there while you can, sort of put the wedge in the door there and see if you can get in. So it's a very curious approach by Penn State. Obviously they've seen something. I look at a guy like, do they think he's a guy like Mulba, like that doesn't have that next level to him in terms of being raw. Like it's because Mulba was very athletic, but like very raw in his movement skills, very raw in a lot of ways. And if you can polish that guy up and eventually he can be great, absolutely. But there's that other side, which it doesn't always happen. So that's the curious thing there. I think Pitt's in a good spot, to be honest with you. I think Pitt is a guy, or Pitt is a school that would take him right now, and they'd be pretty happy about that. And I think that they've recruited him as such. So I think Pitt would be the school to look to right now for Palepale. And like I said, I can't pinpoint on why Penn State is just kind of lukewarm on him. And it's for the position that they're in, for the fact that they're going to take 4 of them, you would think they would be a little bit more all in. So I don't want to say something's up there, but something's definitely got them pausing at this point.
The next player I want to get to is defensive lineman, so fits perfectly in this conversation, sort of. And that is Javonte Waller out of Mississippi. Steven wants to know where Penn State stands with him. The conversation about Waller, I think, is important here because 247 has him as a 5-star now. We can have a conversation about that. Fitz, when it comes to your opinion or where you view him as a prospect, he's blown up. And I really like him as a prospect, but I think he's going to take on an outweighted importance or impact when Penn State sees him as a linebacker and maybe some places see him as a defensive end. What's the landscape changing with Waller now and kind of the recent publicity he's gotten?
With the recent publicity, that's going to cause some schools to go back and see what, maybe see what they're missing. He went to a few schools this winter and honestly, like they weren't treating him as a 5-star. I guess we could say it like that. Penn State kind of was. He like I said, he came in, Ryan, he was 6'3" when he visited here and he left at 6'1.5" inches or so. So like that's going to, change some things. That makes him a linebacker prospect. He's not an edge guy. Like he's a guy that can attack off the edge. Absolutely. I think he's a will at Penn State. That's kind of where he fits in. But it will change some things. It will change some things for schools boards in terms of where they see him, because, if he was 6'2.5", great, put him at defensive end, he'd be fine. But at 6'1.5", that changes some things. The arm length, all that kind of stuff goes into it. So that honestly helps Penn State because he's so far away. He's a great player, great prospect. He'd be the top guy in Penn State's class right now pretty easily. But it's a situation with a lot of math involved in terms of staff evaluations. And that's interesting to me. I don't know if it's most interesting to people, but Penn State really did a great job in not only showing him a very good visit, but also prioritizing him to the level where it's going to stick in his head when he moves forward and starts setting these official visits. That is something where he felt cared about. Whereas some of these other schools came in and saw him at 6 foot and said, I mean, we'd like you to be a little bit bigger. And that's not obviously what people want to hear. So I think when you're talking about Waller, and Ryan's done a phenomenal job covering this one, Penn State securely in the mix there, going to get an official visit. It's a long way away. We're not going to sugarcoat that. There's a lot to overcome coming up from the SEC country, deep SEC country. But I think Penn State has done pretty much all it can to position itself in the front of that recruitment right now.
For sure.
Yeah, Ryan, what do you have to add?
I'll jump in. I didn't want to. Sorry, I can't laugh right now. I will start coughing crazy. Look, two things I just say. One, do I think Penn State is in a very good position right now? Yes, I do. Two, though, their competition is going to be a bunch of SEC schools who have not talked about NIL with him yet. Enough said. I don't want to get too excited because I know what Penn State can offer, right? And he'll get good money here. Trust me, money I would love to have had when I was younger. But the schools he's going to compete against are probably going to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at him. So that's just a decision that he and his family are going to have to make at some point. Do we love Penn State and these, what they offer and their coaching staff over money that could, quite frankly, probably be 3 to 4 times as much as what Penn State could potentially offer? So that's just that's how I see everything right now. Yes, be excited about what Penn State's done. Watch his film. It's incredible, right? I mean, his film is one of the most fun films to watch this year. So be excited about the fact that he's coming back. But remember, when you get to the end of this and money starts being talked about, that's when the real decision is going to have to be made.